am one of the third umpire. We have, today we will be having all umpires, but they are running a little late today. And we will be kicking off with a number of discussions on national issues that of course affect you, analyzing them and giving you the opportunity, you the audience, giving you the opportunity to say your part or put your position in the analysis of those issues. As usual, good afternoon to the listening audience and welcome. I haven't been on the program for some time. I have been both away on business, and I'm happy to be back today to bring to you some of the issues that we feel affects us significantly in Trinidad and Tobago. So I would wait for the other umpires to pick up on some of the issues that had been addressed over the last few days. But of course, there are a number of things that are in the mix that I want to talk about. Before we go into that, I just want to probably throw out a question to the listening audience, those of you who are there, in relation to the Sea Bridge in Tobago Sea Bridge, and especially what happens during peak time and how we view the citizens in Tobago and their relationship with transportation to Trinidad. Last week I heard of something, I experienced something, and it was kind of disturbing on the Sea Bridge. A lady who was trying to get to Tobago to a meeting, a conference. She had bought her ticket with a perfectly legal and identification, I should say. And on the day of her travel, her ID card had expired. And when she reached by the clearance area, they told her that she cannot travel because her ID had expired. And that, to me, was of concern, because I always thought that transportation between Trinidad and Tobago is not that you have other transportation when you miss the boat or you miss the plane. You can't walk to Tobago, you can't take a bus or anything, and to deny somebody from going home because their ID expired a few days ago is, to me, insensitive. And that happened to the lady, and I thought that it was funny, because that's public transportation. The boat and the plane to Tobago for Trinidad and Tobago citizens relates to public transportation. And if you are supposed to travel, or you dependent on public transportation to go, and your ID expired, I don't see what your ID have to do with not being able to travel. I mean, if you say you want to see my ID to know who exactly is on the plane or who exactly is on the boat, you know, for security purposes, I could understand that. But you have an ID card with your pity ID, albeit expired a few days ago, and you are telling a citizen that she cannot go to Tobago because her ID expired. I don't know what is the public position on that, but that certainly is not, doesn't sound right to me. It really is something that maybe those in power, those at the minister or at the helm of managing that system should look at, because that I'm sure that lady was in great distress, and that, to me, is not fair for a citizen. I can't see that happening nowhere. and being adjudged as right. I don't know what is your position in it, but maybe we could discuss it at some point in time. And it is the same thing with a number of different ministries. I remember a long time, well, I think that they've changed that sometime earlier this year, but you couldn't go into custom with a short pants or a tight dress or a short sleeve shirt, or those kind of things. And I find those things to be kind of like obsolete. Those things, it defeats the purpose of what the service you're trying to offer. So if you're telling me that I can't go into a government ministry because I have on a short pants when almost everybody wears short pants, right? What is the purpose of telling me I can't go in with a short pants? What is the purpose of telling me I can't go in with... I mean, if you tell me I can't go in with a shoe with my toes outside, I could somewhat understand it depending on where I'm going, because sometimes I might be going in a place where requires a certain kind of health and safety, and you might have heavy equipment moving, you might have heavy stuff moving, and you might tell me, well, I should have on a shoes that covers my toe, that kind of thing. I could understand that, but to tell me that I can't go in because I have on a jersey, I should have on a shirt and tie, or I can't go in because I have on a short pants, that to me is backward. And these kind of things are things that sometimes we, as regulations in these ministries or even laws, the government should probably try to remove those things, because all these things are things, in my opinion, that reduces the ability to do business with a certain kind of ease in Trinidad and Tobago. And those are things that it's just like this might sound controversial, but it's just like the obscene language, the laws on obscene language, and that kind of thing. All these things are, what is obscene language? Because you say it's obscene language, it's how we express ourselves. People express themselves in certain ways, and you having laws on the books that say obscene language is a crime, and you could charge as a misdemeanor, albeit. But all these things to me are things that we kind of major in minor, as one of my fellow umpires usually say. We major in minor in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to deal with the more important things, and these things that you do to your citizens, these things slow down growth, it slow down business, and it creates blockage that are unnecessary for the development of our country. That is my piece with respect to that. But I know from listening on where I was, I've been hearing a lot of comments on a lot of discussion held at the Third Empires on issues relative to the issue with the issues relative to the sexual harassment case that was brought against Martin George, a number of issues, and I don't know where we are with it, but I would probably open the discussion in talking about sexual harassment in the workplace and why that is so critical when we look at what workers or women in particular are exposed to in the workplace and how it is usually dealt with. These are issues that sometimes stymie or sometimes reduce the kind of productivity you get in the workplace, and necessary that it is necessary that companies have the necessary policies in place to deal with these kind of issues in the workplace, because sometimes they come across as a man thing, they come across as something that is very much unnecessary, and we don't understand as workers or as employers or as government how they interfere with productivity in the workplace and how they interfere with the way people feel and see themselves as employees in the workplace. So very early, I would like to open the floor for discussion, open the mic for discussion on some of these issues, and so that we can ventilate some of these issues and talk about them in ways that would bring about some kind of clearer understanding of how we should address them going forward. I was reading also in the newspapers a couple days ago, and there are so many issues relative to the workplace, and you know that is my area to a large extent. And there was an article in the Guardian last week that talks about Massey's termination policies, and it faces challenges, right? These things, these issues, how workers are treated in the workplace in these big companies, right? While we know sometimes companies, management feel that they have a certain degree of prerogative in dealing with workers in the workplace, management must also know that workers have a certain degree of rights, and therefore not because you are the owner of capital you could take advantage of a worker in ways that take away their right to operate or to speak or to be heard. So clearly, sometimes management might feel that they have the prerogative to hire, they have the prerogative to fire, and which they do in a system like Trinidad and Tobago, but you do not have the prerogative to fire without cause, and therefore that is where the problem lies sometimes. So sometimes employers, something may happen in the workplace, and I remember a union man telling me a couple of years ago, he said, listen, Matheson, a worker could be wrong like a oak if you did not treat with the matter in the way it should be treated with. When it comes to you, that worker will end up winning a matter brought against you, any dispute brought against you in the court. And that is so true. Sometimes, and there are no books, nowhere you can sit down and read except you read some judgments by the court and that kind of thing that tells you exactly how you should deal with an issue or how you should terminate a worker. What is good industrial relations practice? What is practice that will be deemed harsh and oppressive and contrary to good industrial relations? All these things are things that you will have to either understand intricately, understand the rules of engagement in the workplace, understand what is due process, what is the correct way to deal with a worker when an issue arises. And if you don't understand that and you don't acquire or get the requisite help to deal with a worker when something happens in the workplace, then you more than likely will end up being at the sticky side of the wicket in terms of a dispute brought against you or brought against your company at the court. So obviously when something happens in the workplace, and this is something they don't tell you, right? But when something happens, when an issue happens in the workplace, and any kind of issue could happen in the workplace, where you feel as an employer, you feel that you should take some kind of action, you must know that the worker must be given the necessary due process to be heard. So it is, let's say a worker should commit, let's say a worker should be seen or found stealing, or what you consider to be stealing. He remove items that he should not have removed from the workplace, and for whatever reason he cannot account for it, or you think he cannot account for it, or somebody saw him take it. What is supposed to be done, or what should be done, the practical thing to do is to write that worker or call that worker, talk to that worker, let them know that what he has illegibly done, what he did, and probably give him a notice letting them know that you are investigating the issue, or you are notice of investigation, and if you feel that you have to remove him from the workplace to investigate it, you should do so very quickly, and you should do so removing him via suspension. But as that will be a suspension with pay, of course, because of course you don't know for a fact what, if he in fact stole it, what was the intent, if he did thief, or if he did move it and put it somewhere else that you don't have all the information on. So you do the necessary investigation very quickly, and you bring that worker to a place where you have a meeting with him. Some employers choose to call it a tribunal, some call it a disciplinary hearing, or whatever you choose to call it. You bring that worker to a place where where the matter could be heard. He could face his accuser. So of course you will now charge him. You will tell him that you have enough evidence to charge him for stealing or for misconduct, as the case may be. And from there you would then invite him to a tribunal, of course letting him know what his rights are, letting him also walk with someone to represent him, or ask him if he need to be represented by someone, and give him the opportunity to bring that someone to represent him, whoever. It doesn't have to be a lawyer or an industrial relations person or an HR person. It could be his brother, sister, anybody could come and represent him, sit with him to speak on his behalf, or to speak with him or with you on the matter. And of course he is also entitled to face his accuser. So those who would have written reports relative to the issue, they should be there to also answer questions relative to their report. And that too is another element of the disciplinary process. And then of course you could, listening to all the issues, listening to all the evidence brought before the disciplinary tribunal, you could then, as the employer and the tribunal, could then make a decision as to whether or not you feel you had enough evidence to determine that this worker would have stolen, and administer the necessary discipline, or the necessary action that you feel was necessary to deal with the issue. So if you feel that reprimanding the worker by way of termination, or reprimanding the worker by way of a suspension, short or long, given your policy right? So, and that's the next thing, you had to follow your policy, because more than likely you will have a policy that states that stealing is the reprimand for stealing is termination. You may want to terminate, but you should have given that worker a fair opportunity to answer all the questions and a fair opportunity to be heard at that tribunal. And of course, if that worker feels at some point in time that they had all the issues wasn't ventilated at that tribunal in the way it should have been ventilated, he didn't get an opportunity to be heard in the way he should have been heard, he didn't get an opportunity to bring new evidence that could have been before the tribunal to bring about a different position, then he could also ask for an appeal, and in which case he should be granted an appeal. So all these things are necessary, all these steps are necessary to before reprimanding a worker or before terminating a worker. And if you did not do that, sometimes I see companies with the best HR, the best attorneys representing them, fail to follow these kind of processes or these kind of steps and end up in court and on the wrong side of the court or on the wrong side of the judgment, and then they cry foul. But you can't cry foul if you do the wrong thing. You have to know what the processes are, and if you don't know, then you should retain the right kind of professionals to tell you what the processes are and do them. And so that is, when I look at, you see, this thing is more simple than you think. When I look at some of the articles on discipline and termination and that kind of thing in the workplace, you wonder who is advising these people. Clearly, they are not getting the right kind of advice. And as we say, sometimes companies may have effort money. They may have a lot of money, and they will say, listen, we want to get rid of this person, and we really don't care what you think. You could go to work or whatever court we will pay it. Well, if that's the case, the worker will be compensated in some way at some point in time. Albeit it takes very long. Matters in the court sometimes go on for years, and that is not the place. You should want to go with simple issues if you feel you could deal with it in another way, right, or in the right way. And sometimes it is very costly. It's more costly than you expect it to be. But you did make the decision to send it there. So that is just a friendly advice too. When I see these kind of articles, that's just a friendly advice to help some organizations deal with issues that may come up from time to time relative to dealing with workers and discipline, and issues that from time to time end up in court, and simple matters become very, very complicated and very, very costly for companies and sometimes for employees. So relative to workers' engagement in the workplace in terms of things like sexual harassment and that kind of thing, as we said a couple of weeks ago on the program, sexual harassment really is unwanted. Sexual harassment or an assault in the workplace by a lady will only come about if it is an unwanted sexual advancement, and that unwanted sexual advancement has to be that you were told. So you talk and you touch, and you are told that I am uncomfortable with that, I don't like you touching me, and you continue doing that, well then, of course, that could be construed as sexual harassment. And in the workplace, you see that happen all the time. Albeit sometimes men feel that, or male employees feel that they are brought to the position where women sometimes encourage certain things, at least so they think, and this is only when the relationship goes sour that they raise the issue of sexual harassment. That is something that you will have to answer for at some point in time. The better thing to do is not to do it. And I have a friend who tells me that all the time. She say, just don't do it. So you can't, nobody could tell you that you did it. Right? So those are issues sometimes in the workplace that comes up. And you're listening to the program over the last few weeks. I know these issues have been ventilated, but I just wanted to put in my 2 cents on it and hear what your position is. As the other empires are not here today, or are not here as yet. The third empire, the third umpires, the concept of this program really is to look at the politics of the day. And we use the analogy of the cricket. We use the cricket analogy with the government in office as the batting side, and the government that was in office or that was dethroned in the fielding side. So I think we still have a lot to deal with trade. That is the minister who is in the, well, at least when I was here the last time, we were dealing with the minister who is the trade minister. I'm not too sure if we have moved off that. I know we dealt a lot with crime, and crime is a fluid thing in Trinidad and Tobago. Every day we have all kind of crazy issues taking place with crime. I have my position. I have a position on how we should probably deal with crime, but I am not in charge. I am not the minister. I know they would have their technocrats. They would have people, a lot of people who are advising them, good people, and they have their position. When a government, one of the problems we have in Trinidad and Tobago is that we plan for 5 years. So we as government, we get into office and we try to showcase and fix things only with a 5-year mentality for elections. And that's one of the things I feel, and we have said it countless times on this program. One of the things we should be looking at is a long-term planning, long-term development, long-term planning for the long-term development in Trinidad and Tobago, and not necessarily planning just for your party or for the next planning that would just take care of the next 5 years or the 5 years that you're in office. And the reason why I say long-term planning and what some of the benefits of that is that you wouldn't have some of the things taking place, and we should probably legislate it also. So we wouldn't have some of the things that are taking place, the usual bugbear, the usual issues that you have within the first 90 days or so when you get in office, the firings, or what we call the replacement, the changing of the guards, all that kind of thing. You wouldn't have those kind of issues if you had planned way down the road or way before. If you look at China, China didn't become what it became, what it become today. It planned to become that. China planned to become as big and as powerful as they are today. Everything was well thought out and well planned. If you look at China 20 years ago, and you look at China today, you take a snapshot of 20 years ago China, and you take a snapshot of what it is today, you will feel that you're in another world. But they planned that. They planned everything, all their systems, to have to be the best, to take over everything. They planned to do that. And that planning takes a certain kind of vision for which we, as a country, I don't know how many of you remember, but when I was a little boy, Trinidad and Tobago was probably the most developed and the island in the Caribbean with the best amount of human development, the most money, everything in the Caribbean. We used to call ourselves the best. We used to say that Trinidad and Tobago have per capita. We had the best financial systems. We had everything. What happened? What happened? I don't know how many of you understand what Dutch disease is, but we went through a serious bout at Dutch disease. We had a lot, and we did not know how to utilize it. We didn't know how to invest. We didn't know how to plan for the future, and which is what countries like Guyana and even Jamaica to an extent is trying to get away from. To plan differently, long term, like what Singapore and all these countries did, so that the natural resources that you have in abundance today, it will be depleted at some point in time. And they are depleting resources. Then there are resources that will finish. And when they finish, if you didn't make the necessary investment to be able to monetize those investments so that down the road, next 20, 30 years, your citizens could live the same kind of lifestyle or better, because you would have made certain kind of investment in your citizens and in everything, then we wouldn't be having the kind of problems today. What we should be having today is the crime rate that we had in the 1980s. Today, we have crime rate that is so crazy, we just can't put a finger on what is causing it. Every single one of you come in office, every single one, and the PNM, UNC, everybody, we seem not to be able to figure out what's happening. Now, albeit under the UNC, for some reason, crime, the history, serious crimes, murder and that kind of thing are less. But it is still a lot. Every one person that is killed senseless, and every one senseless killing relates to people or families that are in distress, relates to part of the development that you could have gotten, part of the productivity that you could have gotten from those persons are lost. We lose citizens, and these things are causing Trinidad and Tobago to bleed in ways sometimes we can't comprehend. And it all happens because we are not planning for real development. We just put in plaster on sores. We just trying to live. We just trying to survive. And we just have people who are just not critically thinking. And that's one of the problems we have in Trinidad and Tobago. And, you know, people need to see it as it is. If we have a lot of square pegs in the wrong holes. And yesterday, day before yesterday, I just got a small glimpse of, or heard a small part of the program where they were talking about board and board appointments and that kind of thing. And I am a person who, I don't like to deal in race. I don't feel we have a racial problem in Trinidad and Tobago. I feel it might be more classist than racist, but at the same time, I think that we should start looking at the ability to function. We should start looking at merit as opposed to race, because it doesn't matter. All of us in Trinidad and Tobago are black people. We are all black people unless you're white, and we all came in through similar circumstances. Similar, not the same, but similar. We all came here and we should be working together. So we shouldn't be seeing me against them. And you hear that from the politicians all the time, especially the feeling side. You hear that all the time. Everything is about race, is about this, is about like much Indian on boards and that kind of thing. That to me is unnecessary. Let's look at what's the competence of those persons that are sitting on those boards. It really doesn't matter. Let's hear what, if we have competent people, we have critical thinking people, we have people who could really do what they are put place there to do, then we should have no reason to talk about who is Indian and who's African and how much Indian and how much African. That's just my view. I'd like to hear what your view is. Trinidad and Tobago. So yeah, the lines are open. Our number is 342-0081-466-5391. Call us. And let's have these kind of discussions. These are discussions that, and I know we had a lot of it before, but it's a continuing thing. Every day we hear issues, every day issues come up, and every day these issues has to be dealt with. And every day these issues, we should probably be talking about them in ways that we could help solve the problem or bring about some kind of clarity to them for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Good afternoon, caller.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, Stephen. With respect to the, I don't know why I'm echoing. I don't know what.
Yeah,
With respects to, you hear me?
yes, I'm hearing you quite
All
clearly.
right. So with respects to the point about the board appointment, my concern, number one, is about competency. And number two, from my experience in my career, sometimes when people are appointed to boards, whether private or public sector, sometimes the composition of persons, they don't come solutions oriented. And persons who are working amongst them and have to report to them, we feel the brunt of what it is to almost be under attack. This is a different perspective that I'm sharing here. So for me, if the persons who are appointed have a mindset that they want systems to improve, then I am all for it. It is easy now for people in the organization to look at it from a racist perspective, especially if, depending on how that conversation goes. Because we will have views, people may have views, well, some of people are supporting one particular party, and because of that, sometimes the conversation is counterproductive. So you will come and you will assess the issues with a fine-tooth comb with the aim to criticize rather than build. So my only concern with that whole board situation is making sure everyone is on the same page and they are about meat and building. That's all my contribution.
And I fully agree with you. That is my position too. That's the position I hold also. I think that let us start by looking at competencies. Let us start by looking at merit. We do know that because it is the responsibility or it is in the purview of the government in office to appoint boards, that naturally they may gravitate towards persons that they know or persons that might have assisted them in getting in office and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, I think what should be given a lot of credence, a lot of part of the merit, part of the criteria for being on the board is competence in the area. And not just competence, but it must be narrowed into what the mandate of that board is. So let's say you are putting somebody on a board like, let me just call a board, say Angostura. That person should have, that person or those persons should have a certain degree of understanding of that particular industry, marketing of that industry, finance, development, strategic planning, you know, that kind of thing, HR, you know, that kind of thing. And that is what my position is, and that I am sure that is what the position of the umpires on this show is, that it should be competence based in terms of selecting persons to sit on boards. But that does not always happen by both the yellow and the red party, and that is what brings about to a large extent some of the outcry by the taxpayers, because of course they are the ones that are spending the money. Although it's not much money really, but you remember, persons sitting on board don't really earn no sort of money, but what they do is that they establish the authority how taxpayers' money are spent in the respective operation for which they sit as board members. So yeah, that's my position. My position is always competence. I don't see race. I mean, I move away from that long time. There was once a time when I feel I was kind of like brainwashed into the politics, and I used to see things in a certain way. And I've moved away from that long time. I think time and more exposure is bringing a little more reason. So I do think we have a race problem in Trinidad and Tobago. I really do think to some extent we may have a favoritism or class problem in some areas, nepotism and that kind of thing, but race. And I saw the issue of nepotism was raised in a particular board appointment with a minister. I don't know how to pronounce on that, because again, we have to also look at competence. So are you saying because the minister's wife is the minister's wife, she shouldn't be entitled to a board appointment? If she's competent, if she could probably add value to a particular board in a particular way, that is my thing. If it is the board for which the minister has supervision over, then that might be bordering on some ethical issues. But other than that, I don't think a person should be denied a position in government or anywhere because they have family who are in or who hold position in government. That is my position. What say you? And at the end of the day also, what we have to understand is that in Trinidad and Tobago, we are a small society. We are we like a village. So everybody really has somebody that they know. Everybody related to somebody. So how do you go about saying that I shouldn't choose X, Y, or Z, or X, Y, or Z shouldn't be on a board because he's related to somebody in government? Let's look at the competence. Does the person have the competence to sit or hold position on on boards? And I would say the same thing for the PNM as I would say for the UNC. The pitch is the same. In this case, I feel that these are things that we have to start to look at as a society, so that we would move away from that kind of banana republic kind of thinking. If the people you choose are competent, could do what, and they're not just there to make up numbers, or they're not just there to get a stipend, or they're not just there to do corrupt things, you know, that kind of thing, I have no problem with it. And you shouldn't have either. Right? So that is my position with the boards and, you know, that kind of thing. I know there are a lot of people who may have other position relative to these board appointments and that kind of thing, and I'd like to hear it. We could discuss it, but my position is the same as the first caller. So the issue of the batsman in the wicket, I would put back the man responsible for trade in the wicket. If he was taken now, if he out in any way, I think he is in the wicket still. And the man responsible for crime fighting, or the minister or the ministers responsible for crime or national security, those persons are also, in my opinion, in the wicket still. And those persons, there are a lot of things that are happening in the area of crime that I am still wondering why they are not being addressed in the way they should be addressed. And I would say this: Trinidad and Tobago is 1.4, probably thereabouts, million people. That's just about probably about 10% of the population, less than 10% of the population of New York. And the kind of crime, or the kind of gruesome murders and the kind of issues that we have with crime in Trinidad and Tobago is only happening because the government or the crime fighting agencies are unable to manage the apparatus that deals with the detection of these kind of crimes. Poor planning again. There are all kind of systems. I mean, in the past we've spent millions of dollars, probably hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, if you walk through Port of Spain, you'll see cameras all over. What is the purpose of putting up all these cameras? And one, they are not being monitored. You don't have the footage of anything that happened. Or two, you can't use it in court because you don't have the legislation to use it. What's the purpose? What was the purpose? Was that what job for the boys? Was that you just give a man a contract to do that just to spend a couple millions, or to put a couple $100 million in a man's pocket? What's the purpose of that? And the thing is, my thesis here today is that if we have a system where, let me take this call. Caller. Good afternoon, caller.
Hi, good afternoon, guys. How you all going?
Good so far.
Good.